Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one should be a lot of fun for you guys. I just went through every single round in the draft, so at least the first 10, the rounds that typically matter. Went through the average draft position composite across all platforms, and just sort of picked out which of those players I thought was the best value, sort of like the best draft pick that I think you can make in each round. That's not saying that you should automatically take that player. Like, for example, in the first round, I don't have Ja'Marr Chase marked as the best pick. He should still be the 101. That's what I'm saying, but I think there's better value in that round. So these are typically the guys that I just find myself targeting the most in each of those rounds, and guys that I'm really excited about. The next video I'll be putting out will be a worst draft pick in every round, so stay tuned for that video as well. Should be a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. If you guys have any disagreements or comments or anything, let me know in the comments below. I love interacting with you guys there. It's a lot of fun and really excited. So yeah, let's get into it, guys. So starting things off in round one, I think the best draft pick you can make in round one is CeeDee Lamb, and I think the reason for that is just that as far as I'm concerned, there's a really clear top 6 players in drafts this season. Those 6 are Ja'Marr Chase, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb. Almost in no particular order. That's not necessarily the order that I would put them in, although it's pretty close. But honestly, I think it's just all like a tier 1 of overall fantasy draft picks, and CD happens to be the cheapest of that bunch. So as far as I'm concerned, he's the best value. I think that, if you were going to ask me, hey, Zach, where do you want to pick in drafts? Because I know sometimes people are given the opportunity to select their draft spot in drafts rather than actually just automatically taking the 101. If that were the case for me, I would be selecting the 106. I just think that gives you the best shot at getting a great player in round 2, along with ensuring that you still get one of these top 6 players. If you wanted to go 5 because you're worried about the Justin Jefferson injury, I think that's fine too. But I just love CD especially. He's also really great to build a stack with. Like, Dak Prescott currently drafted as the quarterback 13, so really available. Like, typically that means in a 12-team league he's not drafted as a starter, and if he is, it's drafted by the team that either drafted CD or George Pickens. So I think the CD is the easiest one of those guys to stack with and really give yourself a really incredible ceiling. Honestly, like I said, I'd be more than willing to take CD over Jefferson. I personally would, just because of the hamstring injury that we're seeing with Jefferson already. And if you wanted to take him over Gibbs, I wouldn't have any problem with that either. So I think taking CD at like the 104 is completely reasonable, and you can get him at the 106. So I love CD in round 1. He's my favorite draft pick in that round. Moving on to round 2, we've got another receiver, and for me, that's going to be Brian Thomas Jr. He finished as the wide receiver 7 last season as a rookie without his starting quarterback, and now this year he's being drafted as the wide receiver 8. So we know his ceiling is already higher than where he's being drafted. I fully expect him to honestly break that ADP and probably outperform what he did last season. I think there's a very clear path towards Brian Thomas just finishing this season as the wide receiver 1 overall. I know they added Travis Hunter. That doesn't really scare me at all. You're going to have him as like a part-time offensive player. This is Brian Thomas's offense, and now you're getting Trevor Lawrence back. You're getting Liam Cohen, who was able to really run a well-oiled and dominant offense in Tampa Bay. I think this offense should be fantastic this year, and I honestly have had no problem taking Brian Thomas in drafts where I have like the 112, and taking him at the 13th pick overall, somewhere at that 1-2 turn. I love taking him there. I think there's a case to be made for taking him as high as like 7th overall. I think he belongs that high in drafts. Like I said, I think it's that clear top 6. Once you get past that, like, do you want Puka, Malik Neighbors, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas? I think I like Brian Thomas more than all of those guys, and Amon-Ra is maybe the next best there. So, like, it's tough, but I think that Brian Thomas is a fantastic value where he's being drafted. He's being drafted later than all those guys I mentioned, and typically those guys that you're getting in, like, the middle of round 2, early round 2, that have a shot to finish as the wide receiver 1 or the running back 1, that's where you find league winners. That's where Saquon was for us last season, Derrick Henry, like those guys that are drafted a little bit later that still have that number 1 overall finish ceiling. That's how you can win your league, and I think Brian Thomas could definitely be a guy that does that for us this season. I am drafting a ton of Thomas this year. Moving on to round 3, we've got the first running back on this list, and it's going to be Kyren Williams. I was a little surprised that I actually put Kyren on this list because I haven't drafted him as much as I typically have in past years, but I think in general that's just a little bit of name fatigue. If you look at the guys being drafted in round 3, I wanted to put Chase Brown, but he's currently going 24th overall. Didn't make this list. You got Kyren going a little bit later, going like 26th, 27th, so that's how Kyren made this list. I think Kyren is a legitimate running back 1, and you can get him in the 3rd round, so he's like a reliable anchor for your roster if you go wide receiver to start your draft. I think typically if you have the 101, you're probably looking at starting your draft with something like Ja'Marr Chase and Ladd McConkey. Pair that with just a reliable weekly floor that Kyren Williams offers that gives you a fantastic roster to start. And I think in general, people are just a little bit concerned about Jaquez Hunter potentially taking over pass catching work. We were concerned about Blake Corum taking snaps last year. That didn't happen. even if Hunter ends up profiling as the pass catching back in this backfield, it doesn't really matter. The Rams don't really target the running back position anyway. Kyren finished all of last season with only 40 targets. I have a hard time seeing him finish much lower than that, and it's just not where his fantasy production is coming from. If you wanted to make an argument for Kyren potentially regressing, it would be touchdown regression. Maybe they get a little bit more pass happy near the red zone with Devontae Adams. I don't buy it, though. I think Kyren's going to be a rock star again. Probably going to see double-digit touchdowns again. He's just a good player. You've got an easier schedule for him this season. I like Kyren quite a bit. I think he's probably going to be a low-end running back 1 again. Currently being drafted as running back 12. I love that value. He's going to feel great for your roster, and he just feels like a really safe pick for someone that needs a running back 1 in the 3rd round. Next, we got another receiver here. We got Marvin Harrison Jr. Marv's probably the only wide receiver in the 4th round that I think has a legitimate shot to finish inside the top 5 at the position. I think he obviously needs a lot of things to break right there, but one of those things is just a lot of touchdown equity, and Marvin is the kind of guy that has that in his range of outcomes. He profiles as a player that could easily go out there and score 12-plus touchdowns if Kyler has a great season, and he's reportedly put on weight this offseason. He's looking phenomenal in training camp. That was one of the knocks on him last season, is he just wasn't very strong at the catch point. Those contested catches that he was winning in college, wasn't really winning them last season, but it sounds more and more like he is winning those catches this year in training camp. There's also just a lot of talk about them looking to scheme him open more often. Last year, he was just not manufactured touches by any means. He had like 2 targets all year off motion. Typically, he was just running deep and being used as almost a decoy to get Trey McBride open in the middle of the field. And I think that sort of handicapped and hamstrung what his actual overall season-long numbers were. He still wasn't all that bad. He finished with almost 900 yards, had 8 touchdowns. Was a legitimate wide receiver 1 for this offense. It's just that he got sort of overshadowed by Trey McBride. I think that there's a very clear path here towards Marvin Harrison being a wide receiver 1 this season and getting him as the wide receiver 18 off boards. I love that. I'm targeting him a lot, and I think you definitely should too in the 4th round. In the 5th round, I think the best draft pick you can make is Jameson Williams. There are very few wide receivers that give you the weekly game-breaking ceiling that Jameson Williams does, and having him as your wide receiver 3 or maybe even your wide receiver 4 if you go wide receiver heavy early is just perfect for your roster because let's face it, he's not going to be the most consistent asset, right? You don't want him as your wide receiver 1 because 1 week he's probably going to have 1 catch for 30 yards. Next week he'll have 5 for 150 and a touchdown. There's going to be some ebb and flow associated with Jameson Williams' season, but I think over the course of the year you could see him finish as a top 15 guy just on overall season-long production because he's going to have some of those blow-up games. Like there are very few wide receivers that can go out there and have a 200-yard game. Jameson Williams is absolutely one of those guys, and I want those games on my roster instead of against me. He was the wide receiver 19 last season, while still sort of a part-time player. The coaching staff has been a lot more vocal this offseason about him really being a key part of the offense, something they're going to look to integrate rather than just sort of being a deep threat and a cross guy. They're going to use him a lot more this year than they did last season. He was drafted to be elite. There's a path where maybe he just outperforms Amon-Ra this season. I'm not betting on that, but I think that could certainly happen over the course of the year. And he's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 26. I will take that value every single time. I'm going to feel great slotting him into my flex, and if I'm ever in a game where he's my opponent's flex, I'm certainly a lot more worried about that than if he's on my roster. So I love taking Jameson here in round 5. I think he's going to be great for us this season. We've got another boom-bust wide receiver here in round 6, and that's going to be George Pickens. I think George Pickens is probably going to be the player I end up drafting the most this season. We know he's incredibly talented. We've seen him put up an 1,100-yard receiving season in Pittsburgh with Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. Being able to do that, Lord knows what the ceiling is in an offense where CeeDee Lamb's taking safety help. You got Dak Prescott, who loves throwing the ball deep. I think this could be an absolutely phenomenal match between George Pickens and Dak in this offense. He's currently being drafted as the 69th player off the board. That's fun, but also as the wide receiver 29, I really believe he has a lot more upside beyond that, just because of how explosive he is on a weekly basis. Any given week, much like Jameson Williams, he could go out there and have 2 touchdowns at 150 receiving yards, and I think over the course of the year, he could easily end up being a top 12 guy. I view him really similarly to T. Higgins, a relatively inconsistent player that's the wide receiver 2 in a really good offense. T. Higgins is a 3rd-round pick. George Pickens is a 6th-round pick. I think there's a case to be made that Pickens could be just as good as Higgins this year. So I love that value. I'm definitely taking George Pickens a ton this season, and especially in these middle rounds, that's really where you want to swing for the fences. I typically get being a little bit more safe early on in drafts because you can lose your league because you make a really horrible selection in the 1st round. See Christian McCaffrey last season. But swinging for the fences in these middle rounds, that's how you win your league. You hit on these guys that have like top 10 ceiling that are being drafted this late. those hits end up making a huge difference for you guys. And if you guys end up missing, it's okay. You can sort of overcome it if George Pickens ends up being a bust. But if he hits the way we think he can, he could actually be a rock star for us and actually win us our league this year. Next up in round 7, we've got Brian Robinson Jr. Seems like I'm a pretty big fan of Brian Jr.'s this year. You got Brian Thomas and Brian Robinson. But I think Brian Robinson's really set up for a lot of success this season. I know he's not sexy, but he's got a great shot at double-digit touchdowns this season, just being the starting running back on a really good offense. It gives you a lot of touchdown upside, and I think he's probably the last running back you can draft that I would feel really confident in starting as my running back 2 to open the year. He's currently the running back 30 off boards, which is just way too juicy. I find myself taking him there all the time. I think he's a fantastic target for those of you who go 0 or hero RB. He's going to be a nice stabilizer for your roster. And honestly, if he's your running back 3, that's great too. It's just really nice to have a reliable option as that third running back for bye weeks and injuries. I love taking Brian Robinson here, and I think there's a lot more upside than people realize as well. Like, every single year, there's a running back that goes out there and has 20 rushing touchdowns. I mean, not 20, but that dramatically outperforms their rushing touchdown expectation. And they end up being a fantastic value in drafts. You had like Jamal Williams a few years ago, Raheem Mostert 2 years ago, Gus Edwards 2 years ago. Like, those guys happen all the time, and those end up being fantastic draft picks. And that could happen for Brian Robinson Jr. this season. So I love drafting him, especially at the cost. I think he's going to be a great value this year. Next, we've got a wide receiver here, and it's going to be Jakobi Meyers. He's currently being drafted as the last selection of the 8th round, as the 96th player drafted in drafts. And very few players actually have been a lot better than him over the last few years. He's been reliable, basically wide receiver 2 over each of the last 3 years, finishing as the wide receiver 20, 24, and 29 each of the last 3 years. And he just got a significant quarterback upgrade. Meyers is a fantastic player. He's the wide receiver 1, the number 2 target, in what should be an improved offense. And he's basically been a wide receiver 2 every single season of his career, and now he's being drafted as the wide receiver 44. So as a wide receiver 4, I'll take that every day of the week. You can just wait on wide receiver if you want to. He's just a very reliable depth piece for your roster. You can start him every single week. You're going to be glad he's on your roster, and he's going to outperform what he's being drafted at, and he's just a guy that I definitely find myself drafting a ton of this year. In round 9, we've got our first quarterback on the list, and it's going to be Dak Prescott. I think Dak's got a great shot to be this season's Joe Burrow. You've got a pocket passer with 2 elite wide receivers and a bad defense. That spells potential for an incredibly pass-happy offense that might have to put up 30 points a game. That could certainly happen here for Dak Prescott, and he's currently being drafted as the quarterback 13, so not even being drafted as a weekly starter in drafts this year. He's finished as a top 6 quarterback 3 of his 6 fully healthy seasons so far in his career. That means we know he has upside. Just 2 years ago, the stack of Dak and CD won people championships. I think that could happen again this season, and if you don't want to stack him with CD, you can stack him with George Pickens and feel really good about that as well. So I think he's a fantastic option as a guy that you can draft really late, give yourself a ton of upside. It's rare that drafting a guy this late gives you the kind of upside that drafting Dak does, but doing that because you can stack him with either CD or Pickens just really elevates the ceiling of your roster, so I love that. And if you just look at the quarterbacks being drafted around him, in the same round you have Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams, and Justin Herbert. I'd bet quite a bit that if all 4 of those guys play a full season, Dak ends up being the quarterback that finishes the highest there. So I love that quite a bit. I think Dak's going to be one of my most roster quarterbacks this season, and I do find myself stacking him with both Pickens and CD quite a bit this year. And the last slide here we're going to go through is going to be round 10, and you had to know he was going to be a part of this video, but it's Tyler Warren. He's got incredible upside, and I do believe his quarterback play might just be a little bit better than we're expecting. Whether it's Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, there have been a ton of reports so far in training camp that Richardson's taken a step forward. Daniel Jones has actually been okay, like much better than what the Colts had last season in terms of quarterback play. So we're going to see, mediocre quarterback play in Indianapolis, and I think there's a chance for Tyler Warren to probably just start the season as the best pass catcher on the roster. He was drafted 14th overall. We know he's an incredible talent. He can do a lot after the catch, so even if he just catches passes near the line of scrimmage, I think he can still turn that into a pretty big play. I love Tyler Warren. I think he's just an incredibly talented player. We saw last year what an incredibly talented tight end can do in an offense, even if the quarterback plays bad. Brock Bowers, taken in the first round, 13th overall, goes to a horrendous offense with no quarterback play, finishes as the tight end 1 over the course of the year. I'm not saying Tyler Warren's going to be as good as Brock Bowers, but we know he can be a fantastic player. He was drafted to be great, and he's currently going as the tight end 12 off boards. Typically, when you're drafting tight end, outside of the top 3, like tight ends 4 through 20 are all kind of about the same. Like I think the difference between Mark Andrews, who was the tight end 5 last season, and Zach Ertz was 1 fantasy point per game. That's not a whole lot, right? Like Zach Ertz was a guy you were hesitantly streaming every single week, and Mark Andrews was the tight end 5. So just swing for the fences with these late round tight ends. Tyler Warren is the definition of doing that. I love taking him. I think he's going to hit this year, and I'm definitely drafting a lot of him this season. So that'll do it for the best draft pick in every single round this season. Up next, you guessed it, the next video will be the worst draft pick in every single round. So stay tuned for that video. It should be a lot of fun. It'll probably come out about 2 days from now. And just super excited. We've got a lot of content coming out. We just got our draft guide out. It'll be linked in the description of this video. So if you guys want to access that, just like a 10-page write-up of guys that I'm just all the sort of different players that I'm targeting and avoiding in drafts this season. Hopefully you guys find that useful. It's free for you guys. It was a lot of fun writing it for you guys, and a couple of you guys asked for it, so I wanted to make sure I got that out for you guys. So highly recommend you guys go check that out. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Of course, it's free. There's going to be a ton of content all year long. Make sure you don't miss it. Just want to make sure you guys stick around, and that way I can help you win some championships this season. So I really appreciate you guys. If you made it this far in the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.